just first off, on the ground there when you were at the gun show, what were people's reactions to President Obama's proposals?
Well, the overall reaction was largely negative, as you might expect, and fairly defensive. However, there's one very fascinating distinction, which is while the gun industry, the makers and marketers of firearms and ammunition, I think are strongly opposed to a so-called assault weapons ban and to limits on magazine capacity, I detected a much more ambivalent and tolerant view toward the idea of universal background checks. I don't think the gun industry itself, apart from the NRA, which is the gun owners' lobby, is going to be strongly opposed to the idea of universal background checks.
I keep hearing that as well, Paul. Just describe for me, I mean, for those of us who've not ever been to a gun show, describe for me the process there. I mean, what background checks, if any, are made, or how does that work?
Right. Well, first, just to make one quick distinction, the SHOT Show where I've been is not a consumer gun show. No weapons were for sale here. This is manufacturers basically showing their wares to retailers. But at a typical gun show on the weekend at a state fairground, you have two kinds of sellers. You have federally licensed firearm dealers, some of whom may have stores down on Main Street. And they are performing background checks. Anyone who's licensed as a gun dealer must perform background checks at the point of sale on all transactions. But then you also have just other people who are not licensed, who do not hold themselves out as being formally in the business of selling guns, but who as a private citizen are selling guns anyway, and they do not have to perform the background check. They can sell to anybody, no questions asked.
So they can sell it, so they're at these gun shows and they can sell to anybody.
Yes, but it doesn't have to take place at gun shows. The whole fascination with gun shows is sometimes a little bit of a distraction. A big problem is that there are people who sell guns at their kitchen table. There are people who sell guns out of the trunk of their car. And if they hold themselves out as a so-called private collector, they are not legally obliged at the moment to do anything to check out a person's background.
So how could you possibly enforce universal background checks?
Well, I mean, the same way you could enforce any criminal law. I mean, crimes are taking place often in secret, out of the public eye, out of the eye of the police. If you have a universal background check rule, that doesn't mean you're going to eliminate the black market overnight. But what it means is that someone will not be able to say that what I'm doing at my kitchen table is perfectly legal. If law enforcement learns that someone is selling guns on a regular basis but without a license and without performing background checks, they can go knock on his door and say, what are you up to? And if it turns out they've been violating the universal background check law, they presumably can be prosecuted.
Paul, just on a final note, I mean, you know, we've talked about this together, which is that, you know, the gun lobby is quite strong in Washington, but also owning guns, you know, majority of Americans do support this. So in your view, what do you think outside of the background checks, what could survive from President Obama's proposals?
Well, there are many proposals here. There's a veritable smorgasbord of proposals, and I think many of them are relatively modest. His instructing the federal ATF to do its job better is something that's well within his powers. Telling the Center for Disease Control that they should do research on the causes and effects of gun violence, that's doubtless going to take place. The big hot ticket, politically radioactive issues are much more of a question mark, and I think given Republican control of the House of Representatives, it will be, I think, unlikely that anything dramatic is going to pass Congress. I'm not saying nothing, but anything dramatic.